You're live with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with my app nerd friends, John Beeler and Graham Williams. Still broadcasting from home, day 45. Has it been that long? We have an awesome show for you today. On the program later on, we will be talking about webcams. Huge shortage right now of decent webcams. If you've tried getting one, you'll probably know this already. But we've got some suggestions, including for people that own some nice Canon DSLRs. There's an app to turn them into like high definition webcams. You will look amazing in your next Zoom call. We'll also take a question from our mailbag asking about Zoom backgrounds and different MacBooks and whether they work or not and what you can do if they don't. And we'll be talking about what we're watching as well as far as streaming is concerned. We've got lots of time. There's a lot of great shows on there. We've probably burned through most of the Netflix and Amazon library that we want to watch. So we have some suggestions for you to check out as well. And I'll be chatting about a story I had with my cell phone provider that is probably a good lesson for everyone out there. Let's start off with some of the news. And I think the big thing happening this week, guys, would be the Apple and Google coronavirus tracker. They have launched that in beta for Apple iPhone users. And now it's just, I guess, a matter of the health providers and health authorities coming up with apps that basically track coronavirus victims. Thoughts, guys? Do you think this is going to be a widespread rollout once it gets going?
I know personally for me, I'm going to be turning it on. And I think this is incredibly important. We were talking about this before the show, and the idea of, people possibly not wanting to use it or not self-reporting kind of, it intersects with the idea of preventing the spread of this thing is probably the most important thing. So, am I going out to go get groceries? If I had COVID-19, I would not. I would have someone else go out and do that. But if you happen to be near someone in the grocery store who is then later identified as having this actually lets the app anonymously inform you and by way of the way it works, inform other people who've been in contact with you that they should, one, self-isolate, and two, go get tested. So this really is one of our ways of getting ahead of this thing. I know a lot of folks out there are concerned about the privacy implications, so you have the choice not to use it, and both Apple and Google have said they're going to turn this functionality off at the end of it, which I think was actually pretty much the plot of The Dark Knight, the movie right at the end.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw some trust their way on this one and say, yep, I'm gonna use it, and I hope other people will as well.
John, will you use this?
Yeah, I'm kind of already using it. I don't know if we can show this on the video podcast, but the latest beta of iOS 13 it dropped this week, and it's now available there. Right now, it's just a toggle switch saying that you're going to use it or you're not, but there's no actual apps that are providing that information and broadcasting it over Bluetooth to your surrounding iPhone users as well. So, but I think the API goes live on May 1st, so it'll probably won't take very long for some of these things to start popping up in some of the apps and possibly some new ones as well to help share that information like Graham mentioned.
So there is also the Canadian government Covid19 app that they put out very, very quickly. And it's good, right? It's got lots of great up-to-date information, instructions on how to go about hand washing. I feel like this would be the ideal app to tie this into here in Canada.
Yeah, especially because it's an official application from the government too, as opposed to some startup health company or something like that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what countries do come on board with it. I've been reading that the National Health Service over in the UK are going to be going their own way, and they're not going to be using this particular technology. But I think in some way or format, I think this is an important type of technology that we need to introduce to the public. And I think we've seen with this particular virus, and it's not a good virus. Obviously, thousands of people are dying from this, but there could be even worse pandemics in the future. And I think this is an opportunity now to figure this technology out, to figure out the privacy issues so that we are more prepared in the future. And the fact that, we have Apple and Google behind this, if they can truly make this private and anonymous, I would support support that because, as we've seen with governments, once they get control or access to certain types of information, they're very reluctant to give that back if they have to in the end. So looking at some other tech news or app news this week, a study from MasterCard, they've done a poll. Nearly 80% of Canadians are now using contactless payments during the COVID-19 pandemic, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone.
I'm still shocked that there are some stores around in the area that still want me to stick my card into this machine and touch that keypad. I've been trying to get people onto contactless payment for a very long time myself personally, and more specifically onto things like Apple Pay and Google Pay. You should know that when you use your contactless payment with your card, it's secure. If you're using it with your phone, it's even more secure. It's generating a one-time use token. So this is actually one of the best ways to pay for stuff. And so the idea that this is not secure for anyone is frustrating. I understand. I mean, I live right next to Vancouver's downtown east side. So the idea that somebody's wallet gets stolen and then, somebody goes on a run to go and buy cigarettes or whatnot with their cards, I get that can be an issue, but that can't happen with the authentication that's going on with your phone. So it's good to start seeing the shift happen because honestly, those keypads have never been clean, and it's now more than ever, I don't want to be touching them.
Yeah, it's interesting. MasterCard, I think, has done a good job. From what I understand, they've actually raised the limit for contactless payment. In most cases, it's been, I think, $100. I believe they brought it up to like $250, which, makes a lot of sense, especially, while you're grocery shopping during the pandemic here. You're typically running up bills over $100. But I don't see that Visa has really caught up with that yet because I mostly use Visa debit cards or like my Visa credit card, and I still seem to be at the $100 limit for that.
I've actually switched to using my MasterCard for this simply because of that, because it does make it easy for me to make those purchases without thinking about it, as opposed to I had a purchase the other day before I'd made this mental switch, and I'm using Apple Pay, but I had it default to my Visa. It was $101.
How much?
101. And so it wouldn't go through. And so it's just that moment of, okay, I'm actually going to start using the payment method that's going to work in this particular case. That's sort of, it's taken that decision out for me. And I think the folks at Visa probably should be looking at this going, if we want to compete in this space, we need to catch up.
I think you brought on an important point, though. The 20% that aren't using it are probably because their stores aren't supporting contactless payments. I know my local grocery store has an old school machine, and it just annoys the hell out of me that I have to basically, sanitize my card, my hand, and everything, seconds after using it, as opposed to just tapping my watch, which I found when you can tap with your watch, you don't even need to even touch anything. You can still be like a couple centimeters or even an inch or two away, and you still get the confirmation go through just fine.
I'm actually using I picked up one of these UVC devices. Have you guys seen these out there?
What are they?
So it's the one that I have is called a phone soap. And
Yes.
so you can throw your devices and your cards in there. It takes about 10 minutes. And, there's all sorts of warnings. The FDA hasn't confirmed this yet. It's the same thing that they're using in hospitals to clean hospital rooms. So while I'm still diligently washing my hands and cleaning these things down, I find that's sort of a good second line of defense when I do have to go ahead and stick a card into a machine.
I just throw it on my dresser and I don't touch it for a week till I go out again.
that dresser is quarantined. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Don't go over there.
Yes.
You're soaking it in kerosene.
Yeah.
Another interesting story here, guys. I'm always looking for Tesla news. I bought myself a Model 3 back last June, loving it. One of the features I do like, it comes with basic auto steer, which has been fantastic. I typically was commuting about an hour each way from my home in South Surrey to downtown Vancouver, where our studio is. And the auto steer was fantastic. It's just, a great way to, obviously you still have to have your hands on the wheel and your wits about you, but, kind of helps you relax a little bit more as the car can adapt to the speed of the cars around it. Well, they also have the full self-driving mode that I could have purchased when I bought the vehicle, but they haven't really perfected that yet. And I think it was like $9,000. which I just thought was insane. But it's getting more and more interesting. They keep adding features to it. And I think the latest one is that it allows the autopilot in the full self-driving mode now to stop at stoplights and stop signs by itself, which I thought was cool. But again, I'm looking at that price, $9,000, which is a lot of money. And, it's so easy. They make it easy. You can basically put your credit card in on the touch screen in your Tesla if you want to order it. But they've announced that they're working on a subscription plan for people that might want to access that on a monthly basis, which I thought was way more appealing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, breaking anything down into monthly payments usually makes it a bit more tolerable. And now if it's, if we're breaking that down, that $9,000 down over, say, 10 years, and it kind of evens out, I'd say we're probably in the right price range. If they're looking for hundreds of dollars per month, I'm not really sure that's going to go so well. Looking at this from Tesla's perspective, though, I think they probably found that a lot of Model 3 owners are looking at it going, that's a big chunk of change. So they're opting out. And quite frankly, as Tesla continues to develop these features, they need more data points. So if they can subsidize the acquisition of that data by having consumers pay in small amounts while they're continuing to develop this, while also kind of setting expectations as to where it is, it's kind of a win-win.
I think so. I'm interested to see the pricing, though. I can't imagine it being below $100 a month. I mean, if they're charging $9,000 for the full self-driving package, they're not going to be giving it away for $20 a month. I don't think.
Maybe you can do as a pay as you go. So today your trip, your hour-long commute, you can pay $20 and have the car drive for you.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, we're going to have to take a break here on the App Show. We have a lot more to talk about on the program today. Later on, we'll be giving you some webcam alternatives. If you have been unable to find a high-quality webcam online because you want to replace the one you're using, we've got some other ideas for you. And we'll also be reaching into our mailbag. We've had a few questions from people about Zoom backgrounds. Some people can't access them because their computers aren't powerful enough. Well, we'll give you some ideas on that. You're listening to the App Show here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You are back with the App Show. Mike, John, and Graham here. Still lots to talk about on the program today. Later on, we'll give you some webcam alternatives. If you've been trying to buy a new webcam online, as you can imagine, they are in short supply. Well, we've got some ideas that will let you use maybe some of the cameras you have around the home. On this segment here, I want to talk about a little incident I ran into with my carrier. I'll name them. It was Rogers, but I think this is similar to many of the other carriers out there. Do you remember that time back 2 years ago when all the carriers matched themselves on that $60 a month plan for 10 gigabytes?
I do. Hours spent on hold trying to get that.
Well, I got it. And I got it not only for myself, but my wife and one of my sons. And, at the time, I mean, that was a hell of a deal. Like there was nothing that could touch that. I think I had maybe 2 gigs a month and I was paying more for it. So I was very excited. So when I was at the store, they had an offer on that you could also, if you wanted to, get a new phone into the whole package, obviously for a little extra a month, a new Google Pixel. So I thought, hey, I'm going to do that. It was just another $20, that brought it up to, I think, $80 a month. And it was a 2-year commitment. So I got the 2 ones, basic, $60 a month. The last one for $80 a month, but I, got the Google Pixel phone, 2-year commitment on that. Anyway, 2 years have gone by. And I thought, you know what? Have I paid that thing off yet? Anyway, I looked on my bill and it was paid off back in December. Do you think they're still charging me for it?
Oh, no.
Of course they are.
Of course they are. And so I thought, oh, come on. And I phoned them up, saying, hey, I have paid this thing off now. Can you stop charging me that extra 20? And they're like, well, you're gonna have to change your phone plan.
That doesn't sound right.
Do I get my money back from December to now? No, that was up to you in December to change your phone plan. Anyway, I was on the phone for an hour with this guy, and it was the most frustrating thing in my life. I just don't fundamentally understand why would they even say 2 years then? Why is it a 2-year commitment? Why don't they just say it's a life commitment? Like seriously, unless you phone them and and change the plan, they were just going to keep charging me till the end of time. And I know that's how they work, right? Because they hope you forget, and then they can just keep charging you that extra amount a month. And so I'm asking, like, 2 years. So why do you even say 2 years when you don't mean it?
Well, and this kind of, I think, cuts to the core of where our government is having difficulty with all of our internet service providers and our service providers for mobile data. We've seen that they have told Rogers, Bell, TELUS that they have to provide a better bulk rate for internet data, which, we were being told, well, we can't possibly do that. Of course they can. That we also have had the cell phone users bill of rights kind of come through, where our contracts are supposed to be easy to understand, which you get this wonderful paper contract that's easy to understand. But
I guess I didn't understand mine. It was a lifetime commitment.
That they're following the letter of it, but not the spirit of it here, which is really frustrating. Kind of going back and forth. I bought my parents some new iPhone 11s for Christmas. My dad, unfortunately, had smashed his iPhone SE. I was waiting for the new iPhone SE to come out, and of course, I missed it by about 4 months. But kind of looking at it, there was the idea of financing it at $0 or some sort of tab. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, what is the difference between these? And he said $20 a month. And I went, so why would I go with one over the other? I don't know. Okay.
He went off script, Graham. He didn't have a response for that.
Yeah, you could sort of see the puzzlement. And I'm sure there are probably people out there who are working for these companies who'd be able to say, here's the difference straight out. But as a person walking into the store trying to get these phones for my parents, absolutely no idea. And of course, now I'm on the same sort of plan that Mike was on, where it's like, I should actually go and mark that date in my calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I asked, well, like, why didn't you tell me? And, the response was, well, we have 10 million customers. I'm like, you know what? If we can put a man on the moon and you can do these amazing things with your Rogers app on tracking when I'm like traveling and giving me these Roam Like Home package. I mean, they do some amazing things. You don't think there's something built in there that could just like, hey, alert me that it's up?
A text message?
Or just about anything. But anyway, so the problem I have now is apparently it's the old financing plan. And I have to completely change my plan now. So you know how I got that $60 a month plan? I can't have that now. If I change, like if I don't want to pay that $80, and it went up to $85 because somehow they got another $5 a month in there. So unless I change my plan completely, I can't
change your carrier.
Oh yeah, because that'll
that's the fun thing. That's what we do, right? We threaten to go to the other guys. We go get a price from the other guys, and then they put us through to loyalty retention. What a ridiculous dance. Is anybody else tired? I'm tired of this.
I'm tired. So here's a lesson. If you are financing any phone on your plan, make sure that you're keeping track of when that is over. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, Webcam Alternatives. If you can't find one online because you want a good new one, they're in short supply. Well, we've got some alternatives. Back after this. You are back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here. I've got fellow app nerds John Bieler and Graham Williams with me today. Later on, we'll be answering one of the questions from our Mailbag asking about Zoom backgrounds. I think a lot of us have been using that video conferencing program or tool to keep in touch with family, friends, and work. Well, some people can't access the backgrounds because their computers aren't powerful enough. And we'll explain what might be some alternatives for you. Right now, let's talk webcams. Have you tried to get a webcam online? I know you got one, Graham.
I did.
They are very hard to source out right now.
Yeah, I ordered it March 29th, and it showed up April 21st. So a little beyond the 10 days they said it was going to take, but it got here, and I'm happy about that. It was interesting because I'd actually put a call into customer service. I bought it directly from Logitech. And
okay.
So when I called, the next day my order disappeared.
As it does.
As it does. And I've been reading reports on some of their forums where people who have called to complain have had their orders canceled. I was fortunate mine showed up 2 days later. So it was sort of this like ethereal thing where there it was. But if you take a look on Amazon, you take a look on Staples, you take a look on Best Buy, these things are nowhere to be found.
Well, it's interesting because I always like to have a good camera when I'm doing Zoom meetings, and especially if I'm doing, because I'm in broadcast, I'm doing hits for other local TV stations. And this was interesting. Canon has worked out a way now to allow some of their DSLR cameras to act as web cameras, which I thought was amazing. I've actually got one here in the house that I want to try out. John, can you explain how that all works?
Yeah, this was something that Stephen, one of our producers, was playing with, and he's actually got it set up for his Zoom calls, and he has a good Canon camera, but he wasn't using this app. This app is a brand new thing that just came up from Canon. There's a number of sort of workarounds and sort of really like 18 steps to get to that point, and sometimes it even involves a firmware hack to unlock some of the functionality. And then Canon came out with what they're calling the EOS webcam utility. I'm a Nikon guy, sorry, Canon. And that basically allows you to use a bunch of different Canon DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, and even PowerShop cameras connected via USB to your computer as a dedicated webcam. So there's a good chance that someone might have one of these in your house. Like Mike, you said, your daughter has one, and so you're going to see if you can hook it up and run it as long as it's on the list. It doesn't support every camera made by Canon, unfortunately, but it's a pretty extensive list. If you just Google it, and we'll try to get a list up on our website as well. But there's quite a lot of cameras that it does support, typically more on the prosumer side, but then also there's a few of the lower end ones as well, like the T6, the T6i, Rebels, and that type of stuff. So.
And the quality on them can be fantastic. I guess the issue you'll have, though, is audio.
Yeah, but the chances are you're going to have this camera pretty close to your face anyways, so it might just depend on what lenses you have. But you can also probably still just use your computer audio as well through Zoom, and just have the camera maybe on a tripod a little further away and zoomed in to you.
So this is a Windows 10 app.
That's right. We should point that out.
We should point that out. But if you're on a Mac, here's kind of a fun one for you. There are two pieces of software that you can use in conjunction together for Canon DSLRs, and it is for their DSLR line specifically, for Mac, that will let you do this. One is called Camera Live, which gives a live feed from your camera into your computer. And the other one's called Camera Twist, which basically turns your DSLR into a video feed that Zoom and other pieces of software can access. So if you put these two things in together, you plug your camera in through USB, you'll actually be able to use your Canon DSLR with Zoom and Skype and that sort of thing. And to your point, you can use either the built-in microphone on your Mac if it's got one, or grab yourself a mic to use as that audio feed.
So again, the Canon one works with Windows 10. Hit the Canon website, and they will have a list of all the cameras that work with it and the software that you will need to download to do it. We are going to have to take a break here on the app show. Still lots to talk about. So when we come back, we'll be talking about Zoom backgrounds. Maybe your computer's not strong enough to use them. Well, we'll talk about which ones aren't, and maybe some alternatives to that. So you're listening to the app show here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You are back with the App Show. Mike Egerbo here with John and Graham. We're going to go into the mailbox. We always get questions coming into the program, and we'll try our best to answer them every so often. This week, John, what do we have?
Well, we got Alan. He wrote in, and he just bought a brand new MacBook Air, and he's trying to use virtual backgrounds on Zoom, and he's without a green screen, we should point out, and he's not able to because it says it requires a quad-core processor, and his MacBook Air has a dual-core processor.
Oh, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. And this is a common problem we have with a bunch of our staff even that have MacBooks that are dual-core, and they don't get to use the backgrounds like some of us do, like Graham. So yeah, it's a big problem. Graham, you had a pretty good description of the situation.
Yeah, so here's the thing. There are a variety of different processors that are in the new MacBook Air. If you're buying the base model, it's got a Core i3, and so that Core i3 is not capable of doing these real-time backgrounds. If you do step up into the Core i5 or the Core i7, it will do these backgrounds. So the question there is, which model did you buy? Now, if you did buy one of the better models, it's possible right now that Zoom has not updated their software to reflect this new model. They've been on a feature lock because they've been trying to lock down some security concerns. So there could be a bit of an issue there where we will see that updated at some point. So kind of keep that in mind. Looking at possible solutions, we were just talking about using DSLRs as a webcam. A lot of streamers out there do this, and they use a lens, a fast prime lens that has a very shallow depth of field. So this could be one option for you with your MacBook Air, is instead of using the built-in blur background in Zoom, actually give it a camera feed where the background is blurred, and you should have a little bit more success with that.
John, you and I have tried out Snap Camera. That works on a variety of different machines. Have you had much success with it? I've tried it for a while, but sometimes I found it kind of gummed the system up a little bit.
Yeah, I find that it sort of keeps running in the background sometimes, and it can chew up some processes. Sometimes it doesn't play nicely with Zoom, so it's not a choosable option as far as the camera goes. And the other trick is finding just normal Snap Camera filters that aren't basically turning yourself into a pickle or some other crazy potato-y type thing. Generally, they're all the same kind of Snapchat filters where they're adding some kind of, like rabbit ears or something silly to you, as opposed to something somewhat serious or businessy, like, if that's what you're looking for. But they do have some filters that do change the color, and there is a couple, I think, that were blurry backdrops that would work. And the nice thing is that it doesn't seem to have the hardware limitation that Zoom does. And you can run it within Zoom as a selectable option as far as your camera goes. But you still have to feed whatever camera you're using into Snap Camera, choose your filter, and then choose Snap Camera from within Zoom.
Yeah, at first I thought this is the best thing I've ever done. I was creative. I had all these things I could turn myself into. I could wear funny hats, virtual ones. Like you said, turn myself into a pickle or a carrot. There were some like great Tiger King ones as well that got a lot of great laughs, when I was doing Zoom calls with my friends. But I started finding that it kind of took over the camera. You know what I mean? Because it acts as another USB camera. So you either pick the one that's on your laptop or your computer, or you select Snap Camera so that you can do all those filters. But sometimes I had a real hard time unselecting that camera. Like, it just wouldn't do it. And I eventually, got to be honest, I uninstalled it because it was causing more trouble than it was worth.
Yeah, but I think I still have mine installed, and I still check out the lenses every once in a while just for fun. But Alan might want to check out snapcamera.com to get the app and install it and see if it gives him anything close to what he was looking for, if he can't do it from a hardware perspective.
Okay, we are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of these shows that we're streaming and that we're liking and even looking forward to. I know so many of my friends and family now have been burning through the Netflix and the Amazon streaming library. So we'll talk about some of the ones that you might not have checked out yet, and some of the ones that we're looking forward to as well. When you come back from the break, what we're watching. Stay tuned here on The App Show. Back after this. We're back with The App Show. Mike, John, and Graham here. This segment, I want to talk about streaming. We're all watching shows, I'm sure, because we have a lot of time on our hands. But if you're like us, you've probably burned through a lot of the top tier shows or popular shows on streaming services like Netflix or Amazon Prime, or even Crave for that matter. So I just thought we would talk about some of the shows that we're really into at the moment, maybe give some inspiration to the folks at home. And I also want to acknowledge May 4th is coming up, which is Star Wars Day. May the Force be with you. And I'm going to put that right over to you, John. There's actually a new series coming out on Disney Plus revolving around The Mandalorian, the very, very popular Star Wars series that they launched a while back.
You mean the Baby Yoda show?
The Baby Yoda show, exactly. That's what it's become.
Is the child. It is not Baby Yoda.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. So aside from it being Star Wars Day, and also it'll be when Disney is making Rise of Skywalker available to stream as well, a couple months ahead of schedule, just to coincide with Star Wars Day. But what I'm actually looking forward to the most is something that Disney is calling Gallery. It's inside the Star Wars Mandalorian TV show production, and it's an 8-part series hosted by Jon Favreau, the creator and one of the minds behind the show, showing how they put together the show and all the inspiration, all the art, all the artists, and all of the things Baby Yoda. And it looks really amazing to watch how they put together the show. And it might tide us over until the next season airs, whenever this situation is over. Yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to on May the 4th, to watch at least the first episode, because I think they're doing it in order as opposed to a big binge dump.
I'm going to check that out. And of course, it's probably better if you watch The Mandalorian if you haven't watched it yet. And even if you're not a big Star Wars fan, it's still a really great series that, even if you haven't watched the Star Wars movies, you could get into and pick up pretty quick. I'm going to send it over to you now, Graham. What are you watching that's cool and you like?
So I was on YouTube about a week and a half ago, and I happened to see a video with a hip hop artist known as Grandmaster Flash. And he is a fellow who is credited for coming up with a lot of the theory behind what is now modern hip hop. And in the beginning of this video, it's an hour long as he's taking you through the history of this stuff. He happens to mention a TV show called The Get Down. And it was a TV show that was made in 2016, went on the air in 2017, made by Baz Luhrmann. You might remember Baz from Romeo and Juliet, and Moulin Rouge. Some of these big productions that are really tied into music. And so I thought, well, I'll put this on. And when I saw it, it said that it had been canceled, but it was done in 2 parts. So I was thinking that I was sitting down to basically a 2-part special. The first episode, I think, is probably about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours long. It's like a movie. And it's this fantastic story of a young kid named Ezekiel, who goes on to become a character in this show called MC Books, and Shaolin Fantastic, a DJ protege of Grandmaster Flash. This is like if J.R.R. Tolkien told you the story of the origin of hip-hop. Absolutely incredible production value. And it's interesting because it's actually, you've got that large opening section, and then there are 6 episodes in the first half and 5 episodes in the second half. And they have very different flavors all the way through. Unfortunately, the show was canceled because it was actually the largest budget television show ever produced at the time. And you can really see it in those opening stretches. It tells the story of 1977 in the Bronx, where there's just graffiti, arson, and just a ton of social strife as this music culture is evolving. Jimmy Smits is in it. It is absolutely fantastic. And a nice little tie into Star Wars. Giancarlo Esposito, who you might know as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, he shows up in The Mandalorian. I won't tell you when if you haven't seen it, but he is also a supporting character in this show, and he's absolutely fantastic. So that's The Get Down. It's on Netflix, and you can probably binge it in about a weekend.
I've got a couple shows that I just loved. One of them is on Amazon Prime. I don't know if you guys have watched this yet. Tales from the Loop.
I've not.
So there's this Swedish artist. His name's Simon Stålenhag, and he came out with this crazy book. There were these illustrations and paintings he did. It looked kind of like rural farmlands, but in the background there'd be like giant robots and things like that, but kind of weather worn and stuff. And they were really kind of surreal images. Well, they actually made a series kind of based on that look and feel, and it's kind of like an anthology series. I think there's I forget how many episodes. 8. There's 8 episodes, and if you what's that show? Is it Black Mirror or Dark Mirror?
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. You will love this show. So each episode can kind of stand alone, but they're all tied together as well, so that you can follow right through. And I really enjoyed it. And that, again, is available on Amazon Prime. And another big one, if you haven't watched this yet, you have to. It's kind of depressing and uplifting at the same time at moments. It's called Years and Years. And this is a show produced out of the UK, starring Emma Thompson, a mini-series. And it basically is looks into the future, and the UK basically electing this eventual leader that is kind of very Trump-like, but 100 times worse. And it follows this family through the years and how they go through all these changes in their society. And it's kind of interesting, like Trump is even in there as well. I mean, you don't see him, but it's basically, the last months of his second term presidency in the show. He won again in 2016. And I'm going to give a little bit away of the plot. In the final days of his presidency, he nukes a Chinese island in the South Pacific Sea. because they're building a big military base, and it just kind of crumbles from there.
Oh, wow.
And so it is just fascinating. And I know Graham and John, you would love this show. And it's called Years and Years. I believe it's available on Crave if you get the HBO edition subscription to it.
Okay.
So you have to check.
Tonight is the season finale for season 3 of Westworld.
Oh my God. Has season 3 not been like the best?
You know, and we talk about this often, but every season they sort of reinvent the show a little bit. And this season, I think, was probably their best.
I love the story in this one. It's easy to understand. I found season 2 kind of got really loopy, with all the different time shifts and things like that. But this one, they get out of the park into the real world. And not only was the story good, but I just love the world that they had created for the future as well. Like all the, the ride sharing cars and flying taxis and things like that. It is really cool. Unfortunately, we're going to have to go. We have run out of time. I want to thank everyone that helps put the show together and my wonderful co-hosts, Graham and John. We'll see you again next week.